So we had one about 6 months ago, so about a year and a half, there'll be another one. So figure, I don't know, 5.5 years.
5.5 years. So what does it take from here to that point? Like, what are the milestones you think for us to get to, 5 years out, we are landing on Mars?
Well, we've got to make Starship fly, get to go to orbit and back repeatedly. Uh-huh. The essential elements are you need a fully reusable, you need a fully and rapidly reusable rocket, and then you need to have orbital refilling, so where you can send the ship up to orbit, then send another ship up, dock with a transfer propellant, so that you can load up to being almost full with propellant, and then go to Mars. Then you can go to Mars, and then one last thing is on Mars, you need local propellant production. If you have those elements, life can become multiplanetary, and we can have a self-sustaining city on Mars, which I think is one of the most important things we could possibly do for ensuring the long-term existence of consciousness.
Elon, you've spoken about this often, which is expanding the scope of consciousness and how it is tied to multiplanetary life. Could you explain what that means for you and why that matters to you?
Sure. So originally, I had sort of kind of an existential crisis when I was a kid, trying to figure out what's the meaning of life, why are we here, what's the point of it all, is it all meaningless? I got quite depressed, actually, and sad about it. And then the thing that kind of broke me out of it was reading Douglas Adams's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where he essentially pointed out that the universe is the answer, and really the hard part is figuring out what questions to ask about the answer that is the universe. Yeah, exactly. He's trying to make fun of the fact that the answer is the easy part, but the questions are the hard part. So in order for us to gain a better understanding of what questions to ask or to understand what it's all about, we have to increase the scope and scale of consciousness so that we're better able to figure out which questions to ask and answer them. I think there's arguably a great filter that we face with, will we become a multi-planet species or not? We'd be surprised if out there in our galaxy and others that there are a whole bunch of dead one-planet civilizations that prospered for a while. They might have prospered for millions of years, but then gradually the civilization collapsed for reasons external or internal, and that was that. All civilizations go through an arc where they grow up in technology complexity, but then they don't keep going up. Over time they decline, they fall. And this has happened, obviously, if you're a student of history, with many civilizations in the past. You can look at ancient Egypt. 5,000 years ago, there was the Great Pyramid of Giza, but then the people living there forgot how to build pyramids after a while, and then they forgot how to read hieroglyphics. There's obviously, Gibbon's famous book about the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, and how they had advanced technology in terms of roads, aqueducts, plumbing, and so forth, and then people forgot about it. The ancient Sumerians, Babylonians, all these things they've all gone through a similar arc, which suggests that most likely we will go through such an arc ourselves, and we'll be arguably less resilient to recovery because of globalization. For the first time in the 4.5 billion year history of Earth, it has been possible to extend life beyond Earth and make life multiplanetary. And this window of opportunity may be open for a long time. I hope it is. Or it may be open for a short time. And I think it would be wise for us to assume that it's open for a short time. I'm an optimist, not a pessimist, but you have to say, there's some chance of something open for a short time. And we should take advantage of this brief window of opening where we can transport life to make life multiplanetary. And humanity is essentially the agent of life in this process. And I think we almost have an obligation to ensure that the creatures of Earth continue, even if there is a calamity on Earth, which, as I said, could be man-made or it could be some natural calamity. As if you look at the fossil record, there are many mass extinctions.
Yeah, I think all of that makes sense, and I think you've talked about this before. I think one other question I have is, when we get there, we have to set up the whole society. We have to set up civilization there. How will the whole thing work in your mind? Everything from what does it mean to have internet connection in Mars all the way to like governments and rules and laws and everything.
Yeah, I think all those things need to happen, just as they happen in the U.S. and happen in every country. I would not presume to prescribe what should happen there. I think the important part is just that we get people there and we get the equipment necessary to establish a self-sustaining civilization, at least one self-sustaining city. And I think the key threshold of when we would pass the great filter, or this particular great filter, is Mars sufficiently self-sustaining such that if the ships stop coming from Earth for any reason, it could be something massive or something banal. I mean, civilization on Earth could end with a bang or a whimper. But either way, if the ships stop coming from Mars, does Mars die out or not? And Mars only has to be missing one little ingredient, like the equivalent of vitamin C, and it will survive for a while, but it will not. But it will eventually die out. So it's kind of getting a city on Mars to pass that critical threshold where it is self-sustaining. And are we able to do that before some calamity or a gradual decline in civilization occurs that prevents the ships from going there? That's the key threshold. I mean, in a more pithy way, is like, does the city on Mars become self-sustaining? Which comes first, a self-sustaining city on Mars or World War III?
Yeah.
If you kind of let yourself dream out over the next few decades, like, what would you consider success? Like, let's say they get through the first 5 years, even the first 10 years. Like, what do you think is possible to build on Mars 10 years in, 20 years in, 30 years in after first arrival?
Well, I think Mars will start off being very, very tiny, just like a tiny little outpost. And by the way, it's going to be very dangerous. Sometimes people think, oh, is this like some escape hatch for rich people? I'm like, no, it will be dangerous, hard work. It's going to be, you're out there on the frontier. There are far more ways to die there than there are on Earth. And it tremendous amount of hard work. But it will be, I think, fun and a great adventure. I mean, over time, like, this will take a while, but you can terraform the planet and make it Earth-like, mostly by just warming it up.
Do you think the sort of vector of civilization will unfold differently as a consequence of how difficult it's going to be to get it going?
Yeah, it probably will. I think so.
And so then maybe we don't just have a backup, right? Maybe we actually have an alternative, like and the ability to actually see two like fundamentally different civilizations flourish.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that you can only go to Mars every 2 years and that it's a 6 month journey, although I think we can over time get that potentially as low as 1 month, but still, you can't go to Mars when Earth is on the other side of the sun from Mars, like the times where Mars is literally on the other side of the sun. You can't get no matter what you do. That time gap would mean that there'd be essentially a new group of people arriving roughly every 2 years. I don't know. I think it'd be interesting. People would probably trace their, like, yeah, I came on this particular sun, Earth Mars synchronization event. I don't know, but like I said, the important thing is like that we've established Mars as a self-sustaining civilization, and that we have done whatever we can to ensure the long-term continuance of consciousness as we know it. Because so as far as we can tell, we're the light of consciousness, which is a delicate little candle in the dark. It's only here on Earth. I mean, it might be other places, and there's arguments that it's likely to be other places. But honestly, we have seen no sign of it, and I'm pretty sure that I would have known about it, and I've seen nothing to indicate that there's any alien civilization whatsoever. I'd be the first to jump on that in a second, but I've seen no such evidence.
Elon, that's actually something we wanted to ask you about, because in the last year, there has been multiple reported UFO sightings. There was the mysterious object that flew past our solar system. I think you just described that you haven't seen any evidence of aliens, but if we do, have you heard of dark forest theory from the three-body problem? How do you think we should think about aliens?
Yeah, I'm trying to be strict in the scientific sense of the word, of saying I've seen not a single piece of conclusive evidence. That doesn't mean there aren't aliens. I'm just literally saying I've seen nothing that could not be explained by other means, and where the probable explanation by other means is much more likely than this alien technology. So, and for people that say like there are sightings of aliens, I'm like, listen, man, the resolution of the picture needs to be at least like 7-Eleven ATM good. Okay, bullshit, you know? It's like, come on. You got like, was that like a 500 megapixel camera? What are you talking about? Where do you find that thing?
So Elon, you famously have a pile of really beautiful kids. And I know you care about them a great deal, as all parents do. What would your response be if they start coming to you when they turn 18 or 22, and they say, Dad, we're, now that you've landed us on Mars and there's colony forming, like I really want to go.
Yeah, I think if we're talking about, say, the third or fourth set of landings on Mars, I think that'd probably be, I'd be okay with that. Although I've followed them so far, and none of them say they want to go. So they may change their minds, but currently they're not chomping at the bit to go to Mars.
It is safe to say, and I want to move on from Mars to memes. It is safe to say that you might be the master of the memes. And in fact, you had a quote, "Who controls the memes controls the universe." Could you just explain what you meant by that and how you became a person?
Well, it's a play on words from Dune. Who controls the spice controls the universe. And if memes are spice, then it's memes. There's a little bit of truth to it in that, like how do you what is it that influences the zeitgeist? Like how do things become interesting to people? Memes like actually kind of a complex form of communication that's that like a picture says 1,000 words and maybe a meme says 10,000. It's a complex picture with a bunch of meaning in it, and it can be it's aspirationally funny. I don't know. I love memes. I think they can be very insightful. Throughout history, I think the symbolism in general has powerfully affected people.
Today you posted about Neuralink and why people should be working there. For folks who don't know about it, I thought it was really cool. Just the possibility of it is just really fantastic. Tell us more about it. There are a lot of engineers listening on this Clubhouse. What is Neuralink? Why should we care? What is possible with it?
Sure. So the long-term, so Neuralink stems from a concern I had where I was trying to figure out, even in a benign AI scenario, how do we at least go along for the ride? So, for those that are following AI closely, it's obviously improving dramatically. If you see look say GPT-1 versus GPT-2 versus GPT-3, and just how radically that's improved. And just as deep minds, and I think they've run out of games to win at. Basically, there's just a Tesla. An important thing to note I should make is Tesla actually has, I think, one of the strongest AI teams in the world. But it's an AI team focused on real world usability, just really solving vision, perception, and control with AI. But even in a benign scenario for AI, where let's say the AI is just really wants to be super nice to us and make us happy. Well, how do we stay relevant and still have meaning and at least go along for the ride? That's in the good scenario. And then in terms of avoiding the bad scenario, to the degree we can couple collective human will to the outcome of artificial intelligence and what's developed in that way, I think that'll probably be a better scenario than if we're unable to effectively couple collective human will to that outcome. So it's, at a certain point, the computer gets smart enough. It's like the computer's just like trying to talk to a tree. Trees do sort of talk, but they talk so slow that we don't notice. So we need to improve the bandwidth. And with a direct neural interface, we can improve the bandwidth between your cortex and your digital tertiary layer by many orders of magnitude. I'd say probably at least 1,000 or maybe 10,000 or more. We could also spend a lot more time thinking about interesting things as opposed to taking complex thought structures, compressing them down into words, which is also, again, a very low bit rate, and then having someone else receive those words, decompress them, and then send words back at you. So a huge amount of our brain power is spent in compression, decompression, and we could be instead spending it on deeper concepts. And so if you had a Neuralink, if two people had a Neuralink, you could do conceptual telepathy, where you have a complex series of concepts, and you could just transfer them directly, uncompressed, to the other person. This would massively improve the quality of communication and the speed of it. And then, there are other sort of pretty wild things that could be done, like you could probably save state in the brain, and so if you were to die, your state could be returned either in the form of another human body or a robot body. I mean, this is getting like really, it's weird sci-fi stuff here.
This is great. This is basically like altered
awesome.
carbon, right? Like this is basically a plot line from altered carbon. Go on, love it.
Yeah.
We love it.
Yeah, it's kind of like altered carbon. Yeah, exactly. But I think you could decide you want to be a robot or a person or whatever. And you wouldn't be exactly the same. So there'd be a little lost in transfer. But you can also say it's also arguably true that when you wake up in the morning, you're not exactly the same as yesterday. Or the you of a month ago is not the same as the you of today. I mean, a bunch of brain cells have died, and some memories have faded, some have strengthened. There are new memories. Anyway, the point is, like, you wouldn't be. There could be something analogous to a video game, like a saved game situation, where you are able to resume, upload your last state. Yeah, kind of like altered carbon. Maybe lose a few memories, but mostly be you. So now that's the long-term stuff. In the short term, for Neuralink, the idea would really just be to address brain injuries or spinal injuries, and make up for whatever lost capacity somebody has with an implanted chip. The first thing that we're going after is a wireless implanted chip that would enable someone who is a quadriplegic or tetraplegic to control a computer or mouse or their phone or really any device just by thinking. And this obviously would be a massive enabler, make life way easier for them. There have been sort of primitive versions of this device, one done with like wires sticking out of your head, but it doesn't work all the time, and you can't take it home with you. So just having, basically, you think, like, in simplistic terms, I'd say it's sort of like a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires that go to your brain. So Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires. So if somebody who's listening is good at designing like Fitbits, Apple Watches, phones, computers of various kinds, then actually they would be a great fit for Neuralink. Probably be releasing some new videos showing progress maybe in a month or so, and because we already got like a monkey with a wireless implant in their skull and the tiny wires, who can play video games using his mind. And he's totally
really, that's amazing.
He looks totally normal and happy. So it does not look like an unhappy monkey. And you can't even see where the neural implant was put in, except for that he's got like a slight like dark mohawk. But other than that,
slight
looks
one.
normal.
Small.
Yeah, it doesn't look. He's not uncomfortable, and he doesn't look weird. So we're. Oh, and I was like when the USDA person came through and inspected our facilities, our monkey facilities, she said it was like the nicest monkey facilities she's ever seen in her entire career. Just FYI. We went the extra mile for the monkeys.
Well, as long as you didn't make them play Cyberpunk.
that would be a hell of a trip for a monkey. But one of the things we're trying to figure out is like, can we have the monkeys play mind pong with each other? That would be pretty cool.
I have to say the pig demo was really fantastic. That was really cool.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, it's a great team at Neuralink and making good progress. And like I said, I want to be clear. Like, the early applications will really just be for people who've had a serious brain injury, like where it's like the value of the implant would be enormous, because obviously the early implants will come with some non-trivial risk, and so it's got to be like, okay, does the good far outweigh the bad, and then that would be a candidate for some of the initial surgeries with full disclosure of like these little risks and everything. And one of the things we're really paying close attention to is the ability to remove the implant. So it's not like if somebody doesn't want it or it's not working, we can take it out and then we can reimplant another one. So we've tested implantation, removal, and reimplantation, and it works great.
What, with everything that we know now and kind of all the modern tools that we have, like, what's the best way to think about educating a 5-year-old in today's world?
Well, my observation is my kids were mostly educated by YouTube and Reddit, and then and their, I guess, classmates and I guess there were lessons as well, but judging by the amount of time they spent online, it seemed like most of their education is actually coming from online. I mean, I think generally with education, you want to make it as interesting and exciting as possible. You have to say, like, what are some of the, like, if you see, like, what are all the things, like, say, a good video game does to keep someone engaged and interested,
if kids can be super engaged in video games, I think there's a way for them to be super engaged in education as well. Like one of the things that's I think very fundamental is to explain the why of things. Like, so we're teaching you this, but we're going to explain why we're teaching you this and why it is relevant. I mean, we've evolved to forget things that are irrelevant or have low relevance probability. It makes sense. Like otherwise, we'd remember all sorts of nonsense things that weren't very important to our future. So unless relevance is established clearly, then people will have a hard time remembering it by its nature, because it appears to be irrelevant. It might be relevant, but if it's not explained to them, they won't know. If you want to have some sort of if you're trying to say problem solving, some sort of engaging narrative for the problem solving, like it's like far better to say, okay, if we're going to teach you how an engine works by taking apart an engine and then putting it back together, and then let's find out what tools are needed for in order to take this engine apart and put it back together. It's like, okay, we need screwdrivers and wrenches and Allen keys, and we need a winch, and a bunch of other things. And then you understand the relevance, and it's much more of an interesting problem. This is much better than having, say, a course on wrenches or a course on screwdrivers. You just like start with a problem and say, what tools are needed to solve this problem? That establishes relevance and gives a compelling narrative thread.
Elon, okay. This is something you joked about, but I'm kind of curious to get your, maybe serious answer to this, which is all things cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. You famously just changed your Twitter bio to just the Bitcoin logo and the word Bitcoin this week. What do you think of cryptocurrency? What do you think of Bitcoin? What do you think of other, cryptocurrencies? We'd love to get your take on the entire thing.
Well, yeah, I got to watch what I say here, because some of these things can really move the market. First of all, I should say, like, many friends of mine have tried to convince me to get involved in Bitcoin for a long time, like from when it first just popped out there. And, a friend of mine, Bully, he actually had Bitcoin cake, a cake that was like had a big sort of Bitcoin symbol on it, and he fed me a slice of Bitcoin cake in 2013. I mean, clearly, I should have at least bought some Bitcoin 8 years ago. Like, what more do people need to do? Like, Jesus, talk about being late. Talk about being late to the party. So I was a little slow on the uptake there. My apologies. But I think about it a fair bit. But I do at this point think Bitcoin is a good thing. I am a supporter of Bitcoin. Like I said, I'm late to the party, but I am a supporter of Bitcoin. And I think Bitcoin is really on the verge of getting broad acceptance by sort of the conventional finance people. Yeah, I think so. I don't have a strong opinion on other cryptocurrencies. I mean, occasionally I make jokes about Dogecoin, but they are really just meant to be jokes. But Dogecoin was made as a joke to make fun of cryptocurrencies, obviously. But fate loves irony, and often, as a friend of mine says, the most ironic outcome is the most likely, or as I like to say, the most entertaining outcome is often the most likely. Arguably, the most entertaining outcome and the most ironic outcome would be that Dogecoin becomes the currency of Earth in the future.
Awesome.
It's safe to say a lot of people are very interested in how you work. And you often, for example, describe yourself as an engineer. So walk us through, it's Monday morning, you wake up. What does a typical work day in the life of Elon look like?
I guess I wake up and see if there are any emergencies on text or email. And often there are. So, I mean, a ton of what I deal with is not actually fun or interesting. It's like chores. And I've tried really hard not to do my chores, but then if I don't do my chores, things go to hell. Oh man, you have to do your chores.
Yeah,
basically.
I'm a bit relieved that Elon Musk basically has the same schedule as the rest of us. We all
Pretty
hate
much. I mean, that's pretty much how it goes these days. I do enjoy the in-person meetings more than email. In fact, I think I'm getting like a slight negative limbic reaction to email. It's killing me. Texts are way better to deal with, and then in-person meetings are much better. Even Zoom meetings or whatever, they're still better than email. Anything's better than email, frankly. So anyway, I'll have a bunch of meetings. I'll write to email or write to text, especially if it's like an email to the group, like saying, hey, I think we need to change direction and do the following things. And let me know if you think otherwise. But otherwise, we've got to do these things and get our act together in this area or that area. And then a bunch of meetings. Most of my meetings are engineering and design, but of course we have to deal with finance and sales and other things, and the things that are necessary for a company to function. And then there's quite a lot of context switching, and somebody sent me the meme of like, fear is not the mind killer, context switching is the mind killer, which I totally agree with. Context switching is a real bear. Just try to do less context switching. So maybe focus on one thing for an hour and then another thing for another hour. It's really hard to context switch between SpaceX and Tesla and all the things that are going on at SpaceX and Tesla, and then Neuralink, Boring Company, which fortunately pretty low bandwidth. They don't take a high level of CPU load because they're smaller, and there's personal stuff and of course memes. Got to get
that's important. How do you schedule them in?
Like, where's my meme? We were expecting a meme by now.
What does your calendar look like? Are you allocated 30 minutes back to back? You have a lot of open space. How do you handle it?
I do not have a lot of open space. It's generally back-to-back meetings, and it's insane. I mean, my days are like insane torrents of information. I mean, sometimes people, if you want to like audit what I do for a day, it's insane. I don't recommend it. I mean, I was thinking like, man, how long can I keep this up? Because I don't want my brain to explode. And it's like the meetings that are scheduled are not like nice to have meetings. They're like, this meeting is essential. Like, okay, it's pretty intense. I was thinking like maybe I should like at some point like take a week off or something, clear my mind. I know there's like a bunch of people like writing books on Tesla and SpaceX, for example. Like it's pretty hard for them to get it right because they just weren't there. And maybe I should write some like book of my experiences that has like all the foolish mistakes I've done and like some advice for others that might be helpful.
Do you still sleep on the floor of your factory? I remember you used to at one point in time.
I did. I haven't. I only if there's like a crisis situation. I actually. It's like basically when the team is being asked to really work super hard, I got to be right there with them, and they got to see it. Seeing is believing, and so if I'm just sleeping in the middle of the factory floor, sort of going to sleep at 4 a.m. and like waking up like 4 hours later, and like they literally see me, they walk past me. It's not like hidden or anything, and it's like, okay, CEO is willing to fucking take that level of pain, then they'll do it too.
I was going to say, when you first said you slept in the factory, I figured, there must be like an executive floor or something, and you must have like a couch, and it must be like a nice setup. And then, when I came over to see you that one time, it's like you have your conference room is literally in the middle of the factory, and like the giant. Sure, I'm pardon my swearing, but I have to. The giant fucking robots are like 15 feet away.
Yeah,
and they're pounding metal, and it's like ear splitting. And your factory is like literally, or your room is like literally right in the middle of them. And then at least I saw your like sleeping bag in the conference room, so I assume that's where you're sleeping. I didn't see any other rooms. Like, so it's not just sleeping in the middle of the factory. It's like that's intense. Most
of the time, I did not sleep in the conference room because people could not see me in the conference room. So I slept on the floor outside the conference room. But I was asking people to really go all out, and I can't expect them to go all out if I'm not doing the same thing.
When people think, how does the richest person in the world live? They don't think uncomfortably sleeping outside a conference room with like a lot of loud banging going on right next door.
They probably don't, but the people at the factory do. They saw it themselves.
I love it.
That's what's important,
If you had to start, if you somehow magically found an extra 5 hours in a day, and you had to start another company or another effort, what would you start?
I think there are still tremendous opportunities in tunneling. For 5 years, people asked me what do I see opportunities, and I'd say tunneling, and then nobody did anything. So then, actually, initially as a joke, created the Boring Company, and did it. We did like a test tunnel in LA, and then still people didn't believe us. And then so we just did our first operational tunnel in Vegas. But the world really needs tunnels because all major cities have traffic, and tunnels can massively improve people's quality of life. By making it easier to travel from one place to another in a city. And then that can be further expanded to long distance travel, where if you just draw a vacuum on the tunnel, then you can go extremely fast, faster than a plane, and faster than a plane or a high speed rail. So I'd really still recommend, can someone else say, please start a tunneling company? That'd be great. Then there's RNA or mRNA, basically synthetic viruses, which is we've seen put to good effect with BioNTech and Moderna. But I think people don't quite appreciate that that what's actually going on is the digitization of medicine. It's where you can just literally create an RNA or DNA sequence like a computer program, and then encapsulate that in a you have to multiply it many millions of times, billions of times, and encapsulate that in a lipid shell so it looks like a tasty treat for your cells, and you can literally do anything. This is absolutely the future of medicine. When I say it, I mean you could probably figure out how to turn someone into a literal butterfly. Okay, your cells are biological computers. They execute just like a sort of old school computer where you'd feed it like a, you'd feed it a tape, or a punch card. You feed your cells, which are tiny biological computers, this punch card, and they will do whatever that punch card says. That was probably a big eye opener for 2020 of like just the understanding the potential of RNA, and then just super randomly, Tesla actually is making a fairly advanced RNA sort of microfab or something where currently for CureVac, but we're open to making it for other companies as well.
Wait. I don't think I'm not sure I understand this. Why is Tesla making an RNA fab?
It's super random. So, like about a little over 4 years ago, we acquired a company in Germany, primarily for they're very good at automation. It's called they were called Groman, and they're in southern Germany near basically a city of Prum. At the time of the acquisition, they said like, look, we're willing to be acquired, but there's like just a couple of projects that we think, even though they're not related to automotive, we'd really like to continue if you don't mind. The two projects were one is this like tiny chip analyzer, or like a thing with tiny wires for analyzing chips that Intel needs for making CPUs, and then another one was this biotech thing. It's basically there's three parts to it. There's a DNA multiplier, an RNA multiplier, and something which puts then the lipid shell on the RNA sequence. And we're on like version 3 of it now. And they said, could they keep going? I said, well, if you keep it under 10% of resources, no problem, we can keep going. And then I don't know, it turned out like it turns out it may actually be useful. And I know, because I know the Tesla machine, it can make a bazillion doses super fast. So, I think there's definitely, for those who are concerned about the vaccine, you should expect an exponential increase in vaccine availability. And then combined with that, we are, I think, starting to approach some degree of herd immunity with people who contract the virus and recovered. So, which is actually better than getting a vaccine. The antibody reaction is better than if you got the vaccine. On and on about it, but overall, I think optimistic message that there will be lots of vaccines, and I would really encourage people to take the vaccine. I am not an anti-vaxxer. I want to be clear. I'm a pro-vaxxer.
Okay, Elon. I think we don't want to take up too much of your time. This has been amazing. You've pretty much broken Clubhouse. There are probably about like over a dozen, maybe more overflow rooms, and I see so many Twitter trends right now. You've been so generous.